Welcome back to the Explainer. So, today we are tackling this massive fundamental question about how our societies actually run. And, to make this heavy political theory a bit more approachable and honestly just a lot of fun, we're doing it all in this incredibly cozy, warm, paper cut cartoon universe. Think of it like a pop up book where our main characters are cats and there's a whole supporting cast of other animals. Let's let these paper cats guide us through the research. All right, let's dive right in.
So I want you to think about this. Is democracy strictly equal to voting for representatives? I mean, if you asked almost anyone on the street today, they'd say, well, yeah, obviously. We're basically hardwired to think that voting at a ballot box is the ultimate end-all be-all expression of democratic freedom. But what if I told you that for the vast majority of democratic history, that assumption was just flat out wrong? Just consider the perspective of Aristotle for a second, who, by the way, makes a very distinguished bearded paper-cut cat philosopher. He actually wrote, "The appointment of magistrates by lot is thought to be democratic, and the election of them oligarchic." Think about that. Aristotle, one of the literal foundational thinkers of Western civilization, believed that elections inherently favor the elite, an oligarchy. To him, true democracy actually meant selection by lottery, literally just drawing names from a hat. It really flips the script on what we think we know, doesn't it? So to understand how we got here, here is our paper-cut storybook itinerary for today. 1. Is democracy voting? 2. Noisy Athens. 3. The elite trap. 4. Absolute equality. And finally, 5. The mixed future. All right, part 1. Is democracy actually voting? Let's unpack this paradox. The contrast between these two ideas is honestly pretty stark. On one side, you have modern representative elections. Think of these political candidates as like very well-groomed, wealthy showcats standing up on their debate podiums. Elections are, in theory, built on merit and popularity, sure, but structurally, they lean heavily toward the elite, the cats with the resources, the connections, and the time to run a massive campaign. But then, look at the alternative. This is ancient Athenian sortition, which is just a fancy word for selection by lottery. Here, you've got this wonderfully diverse crowd of everyday alley cats, calicos, tabbies, the whole shebang. It's random, it's completely egalitarian, and it genuinely brings a true cross-section of the population right into the halls of power. Moving to part 2, Noisy Athens. Taking politics out into the open. Now, according to research from the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, ancient Athens didn't just use lotteries as some kind of quirky side feature. Nope. Aside from the General Assembly, where all citizens could just show up, basically everyone else, magistrates, the Council of 500, court jurors, they were all selected by sortition. It was literally the absolute core mechanism of their government, and it was designed specifically to prevent power from piling up in the paws of a few wealthy elite families. But okay, let me be very clear here. This system was not some quiet, overly polite affair. Welcome to the messy, loud reality of ancient cat hens. All the politics happened outdoors on Phoenix Hill. Just picture this massive, swirling crowd of cats meowing and debating. No microphones, just raw voices and persuasion. If you couldn't convince the crowd, well, you lost. And they had this wild concept called ostracism. If any one leader grew a bit too powerful or even just too popular, like a potential dictator, the citizens would literally scratch that leader's name onto pieces of broken pottery to vote them into a 10-year exile. So the whole setup was basically a giant anti-monopoly device. Loud, yes. Chaotic, absolutely. But it kept power incredibly distributed. And tracking this historically, the evolution is fascinating. Around 500 BC, Athens is going all in on sortition. By 509 BC, the Roman Republic is actually mixing lotteries and voting to try and balance out different political factions. Fast forward to the 15th century, and you've got Renaissance Florence and Venice using lotteries specifically to stop elite families from just completely tearing the city apart. It actually wasn't until the 18th century, with the American and French revolutions, that voting in elections became the absolute modern norm. And today, believe it or not, we're seeing a modern revival of these lotteries through things like citizen assemblies. So for over 2 millennia, random selection wasn't a fringe idea. It was viewed as a totally vital tool for stability. Which brings us to part 3, the elite trap, the inherent flaws of elections. The academic sources highlight a few major systemic flaws with how representative elections work. First up is elite capture. I mean, let's be real. Elections cost a ton of money, time, and social capital. So naturally, they're going to favor the showcats, the rich, the politically connected, folks from high socioeconomic backgrounds. Second is party factionalism. When you constantly have to win the next election, it encourages this endless political warfare and super short-term thinking instead of actually solving long-term problems. And third, voter apathy. When the everyday animals realize the game is kind of rigged for the elites, they tune out. They become alienated, disconnected, and just totally apathetic to the whole process.
And the crazy part? This wasn't an accident. Researchers point out this concept known as the aristocratic effect. A lot of the early political thinkers who designed our modern electoral systems fundamentally distrusted the general public. They honestly believed that ordinary citizens just didn't have the knowledge or the civic virtue to govern themselves. So they intentionally built systems where the public was forced to delegate their power to a minority of elites. Basically, elections were literally designed to filter out the commoner and elevate the aristocrat. Wild, right?
All right, part 4, absolute equality. Let's look at the appeal of sortition. Sortition provides a demographic microcosm of society, stripping away rational manipulation. Because at the end of the day, you simply cannot bribe a lottery. And the big takeaway here is the sheer, undeniable mathematical fairness of it all. When you just draw names randomly from the whole population, you instantly get a perfect miniature version of the public. The gender ratio, the age distribution, socioeconomic backgrounds, it all naturally reflects reality. By taking away the element of choosing, what academics call rational choice, you completely neutralize things like campaign financing, gerrymandering, and elite manipulation. The lottery is entirely blind. And going back to Aristotle, the sources highlight his really brilliant defense of collective wisdom is kind of like a massive neighborhood feast where all the local cats bring different dishes. Aristotle argued that a large group of ordinary people is actually way less corruptible than a tiny elite group. It's like how a huge body of water is way harder to pollute than a tiny puddle. He famously pointed out that a feast where everyone contributes is just better and more resilient than a dinner provided by one single wealthy patron. The idea is that the collective wisdom and all those diverse perspectives combined actually outshine the specialized expertise of just a few. Now, to be fair, not everyone in ancient Greece was on board with this. We have to look at the main counter-argument, which was championed by Socrates. Picture a totally panicked cat trying to steer a ship through a massive raging storm. Socrates asked, "Would you use beans to draw lots for a ship's pilot in a storm?" It's a great point about expertise. You wouldn't randomly select an airline pilot or a surgeon or an architect, right? So why on earth would you randomly select someone to run the entire state, where the stakes are so much higher? If sortition hands power to people completely uneducated in statecraft, doesn't that just invite total disaster? It's a really valid, compelling question. So how do we fix that? Part 5, the mixed future, resolving the paradox. Well, contemporary political scholars aren't actually suggesting we just throw elections into the garbage completely. The prevailing thought right now is all about a hybrid model. The goal is to use sortition to supplement and optimize the representative democracies we already have, rather than just replacing them entirely. It's all about striking a balance of power between the elected elites and the randomly selected general public. And here is how this modern mixed system actually looks in practice. Step 1. You draw citizens by lot, which creates that perfect demographic mini-public we talked about. Step 2. You solve Socrates' ship pilot problem through serious deliberation. These ordinary citizens, they don't just vote blindly. They're brought together, they are compensated for their time, and they're given access to highly qualified experts, scientists, you name it. They literally spend weeks learning and discussing a specific issue. And then, step 3, this highly informed group of everyday citizens advises the elected legislature. In some models, they even hold veto power. It is this amazing way of marrying the absolute equality of the lottery with the real-world necessity of expert knowledge. Which brings us to a lingering question I want to leave you with today. We've seen the wealthy paper-cut showcoats and the diverse alley cats. We've looked at the noisy, beautiful mess of ancient Athens and compared it to the highly filtered systems we live under right now. If democracy truly translates to rule by the people, we have to ask ourselves, are we brave enough to let every cat have a turn at the helm? Can we actually trust our neighbors to deliberate and govern? The research suggests that maybe, just maybe, giving up a little control to the luck of the draw might be the exact key to saving our democratic ideals. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer. I really hope you leave today seeing our political world just a little bit differently.
Knowledge grows through sharing. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe as we continue to grow together.